Impression the game you get out with what you put into. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Cuimhnigh as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word court today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar in the back of it and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Curry. Curry leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to, I suppose, a special edition of Treaty Talk this evening. We're joined by Liam O'Brien of the Limerick GAA fan page, not just for hurling, but I see you post across the ladies' football, the camogie, the footballers, the whole shebang, really. But Liam, Cuimhnigh or Luimneach is the name of the page, and it seems to be gathering a bit of...
Yes, thanks for having me on, Raf. It's a pleasure to be here talking to you on this forum. Yeah, it's been something that's really continued to surprise myself and the fellow administrators on the page. We started the page back in March 2020, about 10 days after the first lockdown. The motivation, I suppose, for starting the page was 8 of us got together, friends and family, and we decided that we needed a forum, I suppose, because we knew what was happening, what was going to come. First of all, no action, and we were going to have this big gap in our lives. And secondly, I suppose, the fact that Limerick GAA is in such a high since 2018 in particular, it would be an awful shame not to kind of celebrate that and what it means to people around the world. And I mean, from that time back in March 2020, which is a long time ago now, and there were dark days for a lot of people. From that first weekend, I mean, we've grown to not far off 5,000. We're about 4,800 members now. Fair enough, it's not record-breaking in terms of social media, but the fact that the private page that you can only join by invite, it's quite a substantial number of people, you know?
Absolutely. It certainly is. And I suppose, look, from the point of view of managing these pages, I for one know that the work that goes into creating content and the work that goes into constantly updating and keeping the page fresh, I suppose, and you're only as good as your content, and you're only as good as how much you update it. And I suppose that's a bit of a task in itself, especially for people, I suppose, who are basically doing it for the love of Limerick GAA and nothing else.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, as I said, pretty early on, as in within 24, 48 hours of starting the page, we realised it was going to be a job of work. But luckily enough, I suppose, the several administrators with me, all Limerick GAA people, we have my 2 nephews, Ian and Andrew McLaughlin, who proud Ballybricken men, but they're living in Dublin at the moment. Mary Hassett from Ahan, James London, originally from Cappamore, now residing in Athenry. Albert Shannon of South Liberties, former Limerick hurling goalkeeper. Mike Boland from Caroline, and great pal of mine, Mike O'Connor from Ribogue as well. So, I mean, between all of us, you have a lot of experience in terms of administration, and we all are kind of united in terms of our love for Limerick GAA and everything to do with Limerick GAA and sport. In terms of actually running the page, you're right, it is a job of work. But the one thing, I suppose, particularly in 2020, when literally, like, people suddenly found themselves at a lot of time, and because there's a lot of administrator experience among the fellow people in terms of, I myself worked in administration, for example, we kind of nailed down early on means and methods that we could be as efficient as we could in terms of utilising our time and getting good content on the page regularly. For example, there's a facility in Facebook that you can schedule posts 2 months in advance. So as I'm talking to you now, there's about 2 or 3 posts ready to go between now and the first week in August. So that's kind of your base content in terms of images, all match programs, mainly courtesy of our collector, James London, who has a vast collection of Limerick memorabilia, programs, photographs, etc. So after that, then you're kind of layering up in terms of sharing content from the likes of your good selves here, the Limerick Leader, local and reputable media as well. So I mean, when you have that base and you're kind of that 8 weeks ahead all the time, it kind of makes it a lot easier. So I mean, a lot of Sunday mornings with a cup of coffee at your ease. You don't have to be kind of with your hand to the pump all the time. So after a while, you learn efficiencies and stuff like that in terms of how to handle the page.
Yeah, and I suppose, look, the fact, I suppose, that it is very much a positive page around Limerick GA, and we have seen plenty of negativity in the darker days, I suppose, that we've known all too well. And I suppose that's given us a greater appreciation for what we have had the pleasure of viewing over the last few years, you know, in both football and hurling. It has to be said, you know, fabulous ambassadors for the county across both codes, and not just there in football, camogie, and down the grades as well.
Absolutely, at every level, every code. I mean, the footballers are making fantastic progress. The camogie and ladies football team as well are working so hard all the time. There is an appreciation there, and as you rightly say, first of all, social media, by its nature, can often become a cesspool of negativity, and that's the very opposite to what we are about and what we want to be. So in terms of kind of laying out a manifesto, I think you have a slide there that might kind of explain things, what we're about a bit better, maybe explain to people. Yeah. So basically this, what you're looking at here, the banner at the top is actually the banner of what you'll see if you join the page. And as I said, it's a private page, so it's by invite only. And as a result, it's people who get invited by other people that are existing members. So in that way, you have a vetting process almost in itself. As you can see in the header banner there, it's actually Frankie Carroll celebrating his famous overhead goal in the '96 Munster hurling final replay below in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, famous day. But the message below is basically what we were about, and this is the message that people see when they join our page as well. So I'll just kind of go through it. This page is dedicated to all that is good and positive about Limerick GA, especially to its many faithful supporters who have followed the green and white through thick and thin over the years. And again, we also pledge respect to each other as individuals, to each of our clubs, to the officers and officials who serve us, to all Limerick players, both past and present. And then it's kind of inviting people to participate and to contribute to the page, which they often do, thankfully. Please feel free to share any Limerick GA related news, photos and links you might have. Your personal GA memories and musings about our wonderful county are also very welcome here. So that kind of sets a tone straight away, and it's what we've always tried to achieve, is that kind of level of, and thankfully we've had such a fantastic response, not just within Limerick, not just within Ireland, but internationally. We have members from all over the world, the UK, Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and Americas as well, you know, which is great.
And I think that's one thing that people can sometimes forget, is the role that these connections have with the diaspora. I think you only have to look at the, I suppose, the live streams that we have, that we do for Limerick GA, and see the audience that people log in from around the world to watch games. And it does create that great sense of connection with home as well, and very important for people who are abroad.
Totally. And as I said, that's one thing when the pandemic hit first back in March, well, it hit Ireland back in March 2020, was that we realized suddenly that people who lived overseas suddenly were much further away in terms of accessibility and stuff like that, and that those links were so important to maintain, especially people with strong links to Limerick GA, because I mean, as we know, like, GA is kind of embroidered into the fabric of Irish society, as we well know. But I suppose the success of the page has been the fact that we've had so much people contributing and getting in touch with us. I mean, a lot of evenings, people will get in touch with us and they'll send a message and stuff like that. I've given you an example there actually of one I'll go through about the kind of potential social effect, positive effect of the page and the connections that we can make. So we posted a photograph of Mick Mackey, as you can see here on the left-hand side. Famous photo of Mick Mackey, the great Mick Mackey, taken at Croke Park in 1940. Famous photograph holding the McCarthy Cup in the Hogan stand. And this is a photograph I suppose many people would have seen over the years in various formats. And we posted it up, and a lady got in touch with me called Eileen Ryan. And Eileen resides in New York. And she said, that's my father, the child you can see encircled in yellow. That's my father, Gerard Ryan, who was originally from Lower Gel Griffin Street in Limerick. And he emigrated to the US in the late 1940s. And she had never seen that before, and it gave her such joy to finally have found that photograph on our forum. And not only that, but she came back then with a photograph, the colour one on the right-hand side. You'll see the familiar face of Eamon Grimes with the McCarthy Cup. And again, that's a photo of her father 33 years later, again with a Limerick winning captain, again with the Lee McCarthy Cup. And it was at a function, I think in Manhattan, as far as I know, for either an All-Star trip or maybe a Limerick trip to New York after they won the 1973 All-Ireland final. So, I mean, only for our forum, and I suppose the reaching out to the Irish diaspora, as you said yourself, the Limerick diaspora, this connection would not have been made. And it gives us such joy that we can do such great things in terms of the social aspect, again, and the connections, the connectivity that we all have as Limerick people everywhere, you know.
It certainly does. And I suppose, look, the last few years we have seen, I suppose, the rise of Limerick hurlers, but you know, we've had a very, very good grounding in being humble, and I think you can see among this group of players as well that the success hasn't and won't go to their heads. They're not that type of players, and I don't think the management would ever let that happen either. And it's good to see that kind of grounding too. I mean, you look at counties the like of Kilkenny and Cork, Tipperary, who have up on 30 All-Irelands, and I think we're approaching our 10th. So there is still that hunger and that appetite for success in Limerick, and I personally, I see it as the start of Limerick becoming, I suppose, the hurling power that we always knew they had the potential to be. But a lot of hard work has gone into that from academies all the way up, and this didn't just happen in 2018.
Yeah, 100%, totally agree, Giraffe. And I mean, the photograph that we just looked at there with Mick Mackey, I mean, we have a hurling heritage that's unique in hurling. Everybody talks about the big three, Tipperary, Kilkenny and Cork, in terms of success. But Limerick have a very unique place in hurling, and it's mainly due to Mick Mackey and the heritage. Now, it took us a long time to get back up there and to get back up to those levels. But, I mean, the whole world in 2018 kind of reverberated with the sound of James Owen's whistle in Croke Park. And we got such national media attention for the homecoming on the Monday in particular, when 90,000 people turned out. It was almost as if some people were surprised by it, but I think internally in Limerick, people were not surprised by it at all, because as you rightly say, that heritage was always there. We might not have been able to decorate it with All-Ireland championships and be, as in inverted commas, celebrated as other counties. But it was always there. It was through the clubs, through the schools, and through the supporters. And I suppose by extension, that was the motive for the Facebook page as well, was that it was a means that for supporters, a forum to share and be supporters and do their job. And coming back to what you said about the players being grounded, the hurling team in particular at the moment, when you go back to when they won the All-Ireland semi-final in 2018, and famously, I suppose, that intervening few weeks after that to the All-Ireland final in terms of prep. But in the immediate aftermath of that, I mean, Shane Dowling said a few words about marching behind the band and stuff like that. We're here to do a job. But I remember John Kiley said quite staunchly in his interview afterwards that when he was asked about supporters and hype, I suppose, that four-letter word, he said, he said, look, supporters have a job to do as well, and we have a job to do as well. And that kind of thing is ringing in our ears with this supporters page too, is that supporters have a job to do, and that has to support. That's exactly what John Kiley said. So, I mean, even though we all want the same thing, and supporters support, players need to go in and do their job too. But the very fact, coming back to your point, the very fact that Limerick were able to come in and give a performance as a very young team, inexperienced in All-Ireland finals, against a Galway team that had been around for some time with a lot of experience, put in that performance. Now, I know we barely got over the line at the end, thankfully, deservedly so, but I think it's testimony to the strength of character of the management and the players as a whole, in terms of them being grounded, not letting things get to them.
I'll never forget where I was, or the moments after that final whistle up in Croke Park. And I, to be honest with you, I was so sick for the last 10 minutes. I don't think I actually enjoyed it until about 3 hours afterwards. So I was exactly 100% sure that we definitely won it. I remember we were creating the Dreams DVD, and I was fortunate enough to be on that team bus coming back through Dublin. And I think when it really sunk in was when you saw the faces of the people lining the road the whole way down from Croke Park, all the way up down by Parnell Street, down O'Connell Street, and up through the Quays and out to City West. I think it was only kind of then that it really sunk in, when you saw the people waiting outside the pubs in Dublin for the bus to pass. You know, I remember seeing Matt O'Callaghan, I think, shed a tear. It pulled the hat down over his eyes now to hide it. That hat doesn't come off, but you know, you could see kind of what it meant to the different people that you were there with at that day. Everyone kind of had a different experience of it, but ultimately it all came around to kind of that, having to pinch yourself that evening. So yeah, geez, we did it, like. Totally,
absolutely. And I mean, coming back to that, like James Owen's whistle, I suppose it's a moment in time. I suppose emotionally, as human beings, we wouldn't have been able to take it all in one, because you just wouldn't be able to handle it. So as you say, whatever, even about the 9 minutes injury time and Joe Canning standing over the free at the end and Tom Condon's catch, there's only so much you can take in emotionally at a time. And you kind of summed it up perfectly there in terms of yourself and Matt. I think we all enjoyed it through each other as well. And those moments when you meet somebody in the hours, days, weeks afterwards. Some great moments of meeting people that I had played with and against when I played underage. People I'd coached with, just other supporters that I'd worked with, and just almost every time you met somebody, it was like winning the thing again, and you were getting their perspective and enjoying it, and it meant so much to people. I think we should never lose sight of that fact. I think it's one of those things maybe that as time goes on, hopefully it'll even become more of a cherished and golden memory for us too. But yeah, it's one of those unforgettable moments, isn't it? I mean, that sends shivers down your spine, no matter what way you look at it. And as I say, there was lots of tears shed, and there's lots of emotion and stuff like that. And yeah, definitely the memories of a lifetime. And please God, look, we went to it very differently again last December. And again, thankfully, with the page, we were able to celebrate in a completely different way through the online forum, and it was frantic, of course, for those matches. We run a few different series on the page, but one of them is kind of opinion polls. And for last year's championship games, from the Clare game, which was the league final as well, of course, right to the All-Ireland final, the page voted in a majority every time bang on to within 4 points of the winning margin in each game. So that was a fair endorsement in terms of people's judgment and stuff like that, on the page.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something there, which was the kind of surreal 2020 All-Ireland experience. I think I travelled up with Luke Liddy and Kieran Carey travelled up with me, and it was actually it was such a surreal experience to have someone like Kieran in the car and telling stories. Got up myself and Luke. I don't think we listened to the radio the entire way up, because we had the entertainment from Kieran, which was priceless in itself, and it was just weird having being able to drive all the ways into Croke Park, not having the queues coming in, literally at pretty much park where you want when you got there, because there was it was just the most surreal, because like Croke Park on All-Ireland final days is just alive, it's buzzing, and it was just, it was so strange to be able to walk down Jones's Road with nobody really either side of you on your bag, and the three of us walking into the ground. It was so strange. But I suppose still hugely appreciative of being privileged to be there. I mean, it was probably one of a couple of hundred people that were there between staff and everything else. But special, all right, 2018 to be in front of fans. But I think in a year where so many people have, it's been so difficult for people, I think the 2020 win was just as important in a different way.
Absolutely. First of all, I can only imagine what it'd be like to be in a car with Kieran Carey for, I suppose, 4 or 5 hours up and down. That must have been some experience. But one thing that struck me, I suppose, with that Ireland final, and I mean, even talking to Luke around that time as well, I think, first of all, like the job you do with Sporting Limerick and the job Luke does it with Live 95 and with Jerome does it with the leader, and of course Matt O'Callaghan does the Weekly Observer. I mean, at the end of the day, suddenly your roles actually became more important than they'd ever been before, because you were needed more than you were ever needed in the past, in terms of communicating what was going on, in terms of keeping people updated. And by extension, the Limerick team that went in and had a 100% record in 2020, which is incredible to think in hindsight. And again, that's something that maybe in years to come we'll probably be able to look back and appreciate even more. But the fact that they were out there representing us, and as you say, there wasn't 83,000 people there as there was in 2018. But again, I think their roles are even more important because they even represented us more, as in the people of Limerick, in the county of City of Limerick. And by golly, did they represent us in a fantastic manner. So proud of all of them and the way they did, and we all are. And look, there's no two All-Irelands ever going to be the same. The one last December is going to be remembered for historic reasons. Ironically, of course, Limerick won the 1918 All-Ireland final in early 1919 because of the Spanish flu pandemic. So there's a link there in terms of history and stuff like that too. But pandemics and wars and stuff like that, Limerick seemed to do well around those times. So let's take the good with the bad. And as I said, this group of lads have just represented us so well. Absolutely. And look, long may it continue, because there's no kind of signs of it really letting up. I know that the league this year, they've been trying different things. Some of the results haven't gone our way. That's the way it goes. But when you're kind of in your own assured manner, getting preparation, John Kiley is always rotating that squad, always trying new lads. Particularly fantastic to see the likes of Cathal O'Neill and Colin Coughlin come on and do so well. Then they're a group that's in themselves working on their own timelines and looking. Paul Kinnerk and John Kiley are obviously looking at when they have their clipboard and they're ticking off lists for these games in the last few weeks. The scoreboard, I think, is one of the bottom things on that list. They're looking for a lot of different things, and it's very much about that game in 4 weeks or 3.5 weeks with Cork.
Absolutely, I think that is the sole focus, really. So just on, you have a few other images from the page.
Actually, talking about Matt O'Callaghan, this one here. This is a photo from the 1940 Munster hurling final between Limerick and Cork in Thurles. The Thurles Sports Field, as it was called then. It wasn't even called Simple Stadium. And as you can see, of course, in the middle there, the unmistakable figure of Mick Mackey in the thick of it as always, bursting forward. And it's I suppose it's rare enough from that period to get an action photo of Mick Mackey, which makes it all the more important. Of course, Limerick won the Munster final that day, went on to win the All-Ireland. But Matt O'Callaghan got in touch with me one evening, and he said, do you see the Cork men standing behind Mick Mackey? You see him there, I'm arrowed, Paddy O'Donovan from Cork. He said, he was actually my boss once upon a time for a number of years, back in the earlier days of Matt's career. And he said he got to know this man very well. He had such great respect for him. And I mean, somebody of Matt's experience and somebody who, like Matt, who was, I would say, universally respected within the game and around Limerick, wouldn't he praise so lightly on somebody? This guy was obviously a good man, Paddy O'Donovan from Cork, played with Glen Rovers, and apparently was very good friends with Jack Lynch, teammate at Glen Rovers, who was, of course, later on Taoiseach as well. And again, that's just another connection in terms of, and this is happening all the time on the page. Sometimes even people are connecting without, or like they're connecting with each other. We have some great members, including ex-players like the likes of Mickey Graham from Claghon, famous Limerick player from the late 60s and early 70s, won a league with Limerick in 71. He contributes regularly. And we've often had situations where somebody stick up a photo, I don't know the team, and we'll actually be able to nail, after a couple of days and enough people's input, we'll be able to get names for all those players. And as I said, one of the administrators, James London, has a massive collection of match programs going way, way back. And he'd often stick up programs, and you get so many messages. That's my dad, that was my uncle, that was my neighbour. And again, the social connections of the GA, I suppose, that are so vital to people. And again, during the pandemic, probably even more so. And it's great to see old photographs and stuff like that going up there. But that was a nice touch from Andy Cannon, get in touch about that gentleman there, Paddy, because that's the difference, I suppose. What sets apart, I suppose, the GA from professional sports is that they walk among us, they work with us, they live next door to us. Like, don't get me wrong, rugby and soccer are fantastic games. They're played all around the world. But somehow these people are separate to society simply because they're professionals. Whereas when it comes to amateur sport, camogie, hurling, ladies football and football. And that's why I suppose with the page, there's an extra kind of onus on us to respect those players, because they have to go to work on Monday morning. Like, they have to, it's not like they're on some huge wage or anything like that, So yeah, it's just great. And I suppose it's just all about the supporters. And I mean, we're always trying to champion supporters on the page, obviously, as well, because their role is so important. Like I was saying about John Kiley, after the 18th semi-final, saying the supporters have a role. And I was talking to this gentleman here, Patrick Buckley, known as the Western Warrior. And I think everyone in Limerick and everyone in Ireland and beyond probably knows Patrick Buckley, the Western Warrior, at this stage. And I had a fantastic conversation with Patrick only last Sunday night for about an hour, and he's regaling me with loads of brilliant stories about his time going to matches since the early 70s with Limerick. And we do these little profiles from time to time, where we profile supporters and ask them their favourite players, and I asked Pat like what his favourite memories were, and then I said, what was your biggest disappointment? And biggest disappointment? And he said it's never disappointing following Limerick. And as the quote says on the note there, he said that every day is a good day when you support Limerick, win, lose or draw. And like that's him. And people that know him mean that this isn't just something he's saying as some kind of a throwaway comment. He means this heart and soul. And I mean, that's exactly the kind of person that the page is about, and that we must celebrate and cherish. I mean, every player knows Patrick Buckley, Shane Dowling. The funny thing about Patrick Buckley, he told me, is it got to the stage now when he meets somebody without his face paint on, people don't recognize him. He said he met Richie Venice one time in the train, he didn't know who he was. So yeah, but no, that's what we're about, and it's a bit of fun. Of course, like, we let people vent to a degree, but I mean, it's always very respectful, and that's the way we'll keep it. And it's just fantastic, I suppose. And again, what you're doing here is fantastic. Sporting Limerick, that's exactly what it's about. I mean, there's no one to touch us in this country, and I don't say that boastfully. I would have said this even before 2018 in terms of our support. It's just that, I suppose, to the nation after the All-Ireland win, the outpouring of emotion and the tens of thousands of people on the streets in Limerick for the homecoming might have been a surprise to other people, but I think deep down it wasn't such a surprise to us, because we knew that we always had it. It's just that we needed a bit of gold to garnish the green and white with. And thankfully, in the last few years, we've been getting those, picking up those trophies, and long may it continue in future.
Liam, and on that note, I think we'll leave it there, because I'm hoping, like yourself, that we will have plenty more days of Limerick captains raising silverware aloft at the grounds around Munster, and hopefully in Croke Park as well. So listen, Liam O'Brien of Cuimhnigh Luimneach, thanks so much for joining us. And
thanks so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.